He had it all: a loving, pregnant wife, a billion-dollar merger on the horizon, and a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But Marcus Vance was a man who wanted more. He called his wife, Serafina, a liability. He humiliated her, betrayed her, and threw her out of his home to make room for his mistress. He thought he was untouchable. What he didn't know was that Serafina's quiet, unassuming father wasn't just comfortable, he was a tycoon. And when a tycoon's daughter is betrayed, the fall doesn't just hurt. It's absolute. The chandeliers at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's gala dripped crystals like frozen rain, each one reflecting the strained smile on Serafina Vance's face. At 7 months pregnant, her feet ached in her custom-made heels, and the sheer weight of her emerald and diamond necklace, a push present from her husband Marcus, felt more like a beautiful yoke than a gift. "Marcus, darling, I'm feeling a little faint," Serafina murmured, touching his arm. "Do you think we could?" Marcus Vance didn't look at her. His eyes, a sharp, metallic blue, were scanning the room, hunting for his next opportunity. He was a man carved from ambition, handsome in the way a predator is handsome. He ran Vance Innovations, a tech startup that had ballooned in valuation, and he was on the cusp of his masterpiece, a merger with the Japanese conglomerate Yoshida Corp. "In a minute, Sarah," he said, his voice a low, impatient hum. He patted her hand dismissively. "Go sit by the pillar. I need to speak to the board member from Sterling Thorne Capital." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This is for us, for the baby." Serafina nodded, retreating to the relative quiet of a marble alcove. This was her life now, a beautiful backdrop for her husband's meteoric rise. She had met Marcus 3 years ago. She'd been working as a curator at a small gallery, and he'd been a charming, relentless force of nature. She loved him, or at least she loved the man he had been. The man who was now schmoozing by the Rodin sculptures was a stranger, all hard edges and cold calculations. She rubbed her swollen belly. This baby, a boy, was supposed to fix the growing chasm between them. Instead, it seemed to have accelerated Marcus's detachment. He complained about her hormonal state, her fatigue, her new rounded shape. She pulled out her phone and found a text from her father, Arthur Hayes. Serafina smiled, a genuine one this time. Her father was her anchor. He was a quiet man, semi-retired, who managed his family investments from a sprawling, comfortable estate in upstate New York. He'd never been flashy, preferring old books and long walks to the glittering shark tank Marcus adored. Marcus found him pleasantly irrelevant, a relic of old money who didn't understand the speed of the new world. She didn't tell him that Marcus had snapped at her in the car, angry that she'd asked him to slow down. She didn't tell him that networking looked a lot like flirting. An hour later, her feet were numb. She decided to find Marcus. They had to leave. She navigated the maze of tables, the air thick with perfume and the sound of false laughter. She checked the main hall, the terrace, and then the private donor lounge. She found him in a secluded hallway, tucked behind a tapestry. He wasn't alone. With him was a woman Serafina recognized, Chloe Dubois. Chloe was a razor-sharp VP from a rival firm, known for her merciless tactics and her couture wardrobe. She was the opposite of Serafina, sleek, cold, and not at all pregnant. Marcus had his back to the hallway, but Serafina could see Chloe's face. She was laughing, her scarlet-painted fingernail tracing the lapel of Marcus's tuxedo. "You're sure she won't be a problem?" Chloe murmured, her voice like expensive whiskey. "The timing is messy." "She's not a problem. She's a formality," Marcus said. Serafina's blood turned to ice. His voice was laced with a contempt she had never heard. She's emotional pregnant barely understands what I do. She thinks her father's investments are impressive. It's adorable. Chloe tilted her head. And the deal, Yoshida, is secure. As of this morning, Marcus said, his voice dropping. The moment the ink is dry, I'm filing. The prenup is ironclad. She gets her trust fund back and a small settlement. By the time the baby's born, she'll be a memory. Serafina's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Filing. Prenup. Settlement. And us, Chloe purred. Marcus leaned in. Serafina saw his hand go into his pocket. He pulled out a small black velvet box. Not a ring box. Something flatter. For the new VP of the merged company, he whispered. A key to my penthouse and my future. He kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was a hungry, possessive kiss, a claim of ownership. Serafina didn't make a sound. She backed away her vision, tunneling the sound of the orchestra fading into a dull roar. The baby kicked a sharp, sudden jab, as if he too could feel the betrayal. She stumbled out of the museum, past the security guards and the flashing cameras, and hailed a cab, the cold night air hitting her face as the first scalding tear fell. The cage wasn't gilded. It was just a cage. And the door had just been slammed shut. The taxi ride back to their penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue was a blur of traffic lights and suffocating panic. Serafina paid the driver with a trembling hand, her mind replaying the scene over and over. A formality. She'll be a memory. She let herself into the vast, silent apartment. It was sterile, decorated by an interior designer Marcus had hired, all chrome and glass and shades of grey. It had never felt like a home. Tonight, it felt like a tomb. She went straight to Marcus's home office. It was usually locked, but in his haste for the gala, he had left it ajar. She flicked on the desk lamp. His laptop was open. He was so arrogant, so sure of her passivity, that he hadn't even bothered to close his files. It didn't take long. There was a folder on his desktop labeled Project New Dawn. She clicked it. Inside were not just files on the Yoshida merger, but private financial statements, offshore account details, and a subfolder simply titled Dissolution. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She clicked it. There it was. A petition for dissolution of marriage, drafted by the most ruthless divorce attorney in New York, a man named Silas Croft. It was dated 3 weeks ago, but it was the other documents that made her sick. He had systematically been moving assets, funneling money from Vance Innovations into private accounts that weren't in her name. He was draining the company before the merger, creating a separate personal fortune. He wasn't just planning to divorce her. He was planning to leave her with nothing but the scraps outlined in their prenuptial agreement, which she had signed without a second thought, believing in their love. And then she saw the emails, a long, damning chain between Marcus and Chloe Dubois. Marcus. The obstetrician confirmed. 7 months. We have to move fast. Once the deal closes, I file. The pregnancy complicates the optics, but Silas says we can paint her as unstable, hormonal, depressed. Chloe. As long as it doesn't spook Yoshida. My contacts there are solid, but they're traditionalists. Marcus. They won't know until it's done. By then, I'll be the new face of their US operations, and you'll be by my side. She'll be back upstate with her quaint, boring father before the first quarterly report is due. quaint, boring father." Serafina whispered the words, tasting like ash. She heard the elevator ding, the private elevator that opened directly into their foyer. Her body went rigid. Marcus stepped in, whistling softly. He saw her, and his face tightened. "What are you doing up? And why are you in my office?" Serafina didn't move from his chair. She just looked at him, the woman he thought was a hormonal, unstable formality. "Project New Dawn," she said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "Is that what you're calling it? Your new life with Chloe? The one you're building by betraying your pregnant wife?" Marcus's casual arrogance evaporated, replaced by a flash of pure, cold fury. He saw the laptop screen. He knew he was caught. "You went through my things," he hissed. "You're dissolving our marriage?" She shot back, standing up, her hand on her belly. "You're calling me unstable to your lawyers. You're giving her a key to our home." The confession in the hallway had broken her heart. The evidence on the laptop had ignited a cold fire she didn't know she possessed. Marcus didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He advanced on her, his face a mask of contempt. "So you know," he spat. "Good. It saves me a boring conversation. Yes, I'm leaving you. This. He gestured to her and her stomach. "This isn't the life I want. You're slow. You're dull. You're a chain around my neck. I'm merging with Yoshida. I'm going to be worth $10 billion. I need a partner, not a dependent." "I am your wife," she choked out, tears welling. "I am carrying your child." "A child I never wanted," he roared, and the cruelty of it silenced her. "I wanted a dynasty. You gave me a burden." Chloe understands ambition. She understands power. You understand galleries. And your father's dusty old money. He grabbed her arm. "Get out of my office." "Your office?" she cried, pulling away. "This is my home, too." "No," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a terrifying calm. He walked to the intercom. "It's my penthouse. My name is on the deed. Your prenup entitles you to your dowry, and that's it. And I want you out. Now." He pressed the button for his private security guard in the lobby. "Miguel, Mrs. Vance is leaving. Please escort her from the premises." "Marcus, no." Serafina pleaded, stumbling back. "It's 3 in the morning. I'm pregnant. Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care," he said, straightening his tie. He walked to the bar and poured himself a scotch. "Go to a hotel. Go to your father. Go to hell for all I care. The merger signs in 48 hours. When it does, you will be officially irrelevant." The security guard, Miguel, arrived looking deeply uncomfortable. "Sir." "Take her. She can pack 1 bag," Marcus said, turning his back on her. "And if she tries to take anything of value, call the police." "Marcus!" She screamed, a raw, primal sound of pain and disbelief. He just took a sip of his scotch. "Your presence is depressing, Serafina, and bad for business." Miguel gently touched her arm. "Ma'am, please." Numb, defeated, and utterly broken, Serafina let the guard lead her to the bedroom. She packed a small overnight bag, her hands shaking so hard she could barely zip it. Her emerald necklace was still on the dresser. She looked at it, then at her reflection, pale, tear-streaked, pregnant, and discarded. She left the necklace. She wouldn't take a single thing from this monster. As Miguel escorted her to the service elevator, Marcus's voice echoed from the living room, already on the phone. "Chloe, Hi, baby. Yeah, a little hiccup, but it's handled. The place is all ours. I'll see you tomorrow. The elevator doors closed, and Serafina Vance, daughter of one of the richest men in the world, was homeless on the streets of New York. Serafina stood on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue at 3:15 a.m. The city lights, usually so magical, felt garish and mocking. Her phone was at 10% battery. She had her wallet, her small bag, and the weight of her unborn child. She couldn't breathe. The panic was a physical thing, tightening her chest, making her dizzy. Where do I go? He was right. Her friends were his friends. Society people who would side with the money and the power. She hailed a cab, her mind racing. She needed a safe place, a place he couldn't reach her. The Carlyle, she told the driver. It was an old-world hotel, discreet and quiet. She checked in under her maiden name, Serafina Hayes, using her personal credit card, the one her father had given her, not the joint account she shared with Marcus. The concierge, a kind-faced older man, noted her distress and her condition, and silently upgraded her to a suite. Once inside the plush, quiet room, Serafina locked the door, slid to the floor, and finally let go. She wept. She wept for her marriage, for her baby, for the love she thought was real. She cried until her throat was raw and her stomach ached from the force of it. After an hour, the tears subsided, replaced by a cold, clear, vibrating rage. He will not destroy me. He will not destroy this baby. She plugged in her phone. She had one call to make. She dialed. It rang twice. Serafina. My girl, are you all right? It's 4 a.m. His voice, calm, warm, steady. Her father. Dad, she tried, but her voice broke. Sarah, what is it? Where are you? The warmth was gone, replaced by a sudden, sharp urgency. I'm at the Carlyle. Daddy, Marcus, she told him everything. The gala, Chloe Dubois, the laptop, the divorce papers, the financial fraud, the penthouse, being thrown out pregnant in the middle of the night. The line was silent. For a moment she thought he hadn't heard her. Dad, are you there? When he spoke, his voice was unrecognizable. It was not the voice of the kindly, book-loving retiree. It was the voice of a man who built an empire from nothing. A voice that hadn't been used in this way for a very, very long time. It was cold as a glacier. He did what? He said I was a liability. Serafina whispered, a fresh wave of tears coming. He said you were quaint. Another pause. Longer this time. Serafina. Arthur Hayes said, his voice terrifyingly precise. I want you to listen to me. Lock your door. Order some tea and something to eat for the baby. Do not leave the room. Do not speak to anyone. A man named Julian Croft will be at your door in 30 minutes. He is my personal counsel. He is my right hand. Trust him. He will take care of everything. Do you understand? Yes, but... Dad, what are you? I'm going to handle Marcus, Arthur said, and I am going to handle the woman Chloe Dubois. But the merger... Dad, he's worth billions. He's merging with Yoshida Corp. He said he's untouchable. Serafina heard a sound on the other end of the line. It was a laugh, a short, dry, mirthless bark that sent a shiver down her spine. Yoshida Corp, Arthur Hayes asked. Is that who he's merging with? Oh, Marcus, you stupid, stupid boy. Dad, what do you mean? Don't you worry about Yoshida Corp, my girl. Just focus on your health. Focus on my grandchild. I love you. Julian is on his way." The line clicked dead. 400 miles away, in his quaint upstate library, Arthur Hayes stood. He was not in his pajamas. He was in his study, a 20,000-square-foot command center, hidden beneath the old estate filled with data screens and a private server team. He was Arthur Hayes, founder and sole owner of Hayes Consolidated, a $300 billion private global holding company with interests in logistics, finance, technology, and media. He pressed an intercom. "Julian." Julian Croft, a man in a perfectly tailored suit who had been sitting in the adjoining room, entered. "Sir, Ms. Hayes is secure at the Carlisle." "She is." He put her out. "Pregnant. On the street." Julian's face, normally impassive, hardened. "I see. The target is Marcus Vance. Vance Innovations. The merger is with Yoshida Corp." Julian allowed himself a small, predatory smile. "Sir, if you recall, we acquired the controlling interest in Yoshida's parent company 6 months ago through our Singaporean shell. The entire merger is with us." "I recall," Arthur said. "Marcus Vance thinks he's swimming in the ocean. He's been in my shark tank all along. He just didn't know it." Arthur walked to his desk. "He called me Quaint Julian. A fatal miscalculation, sir. I want him ruined, not just beaten. Ruined. I want his company dismantled. I want his merger voided. I want his penthouse seized, his accounts frozen, and his reputation obliterated. I want him to have nothing, and I want it done by morning." "We'll start with Sterling Thorne Capital," Julian said. "The bridge loan for the merger was contingent on his personal guarantee, which we now know is based on fraudulent asset declarations. We'll trigger the covenant clauses." "Do it," Arthur said. "Then call Tokyo. Wake up Mr. Takeda. Tell him the deal is off and why. Send him the file Chloe Dubois's assistant helpfully leaked to us last week, the one showing Marcus's New Dawn offshore accounts. Takeda-san does not appreciate being stolen from." "And Ms. Dubois?" Julian asked. "She chose her side," Arthur said, looking at a photo of a 7-year-old Serafina on his desk. "Make sure she lands hard." "Yes, sir," Julian said. "Julian," Arthur called as his counsel reached the door. "Sir, make it hurt." Marcus Vance woke up at 7:00 a.m., the sunlight streaming into his penthouse. He felt perfect, light, unburdened. Serafina, with her moods and her belly and her perpetual disappointment, was gone. He stretched naked and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked down on Central Park. "This is my city," he said, toasting the view with a glass of water. Today was the day. At 10:00 a.m., the final papers would be signed with Yoshida Corp. By 10:05 a.m., his net worth would be $10 billion. By 11:00 a.m., Silas Croft would be serving Serafina with divorce papers. He'd already sent a car for Chloe. They would celebrate tonight. He showered, dressed in his most expensive suit, a $20,000 Brioni, and headed to his office. He felt the hum of power in his veins. He was untouchable. He walked into the Vance Innovations boardroom at 9:00 a.m. His CFO, David Chen, was waiting along with his legal team. David looked green. "David, you look terrible," Marcus said, clapping him on the back. "Big day champagne by noon, eh?" "Marcus," David said, his voice trembling. "We have a problem." Marcus's good humor soured. "A problem? There are no problems today." Sterling Thorn Capital, David said, holding up his tablet. They just sent this. 6:02 a.m. They're calling our bridge loan. Effective immediately. Marcus stared. What? They can't. That loan is secured. It's $500 million. We need it to close the deal. They're citing material breach of covenants and fraudulent misrepresentation of assets. David read his finger shaking. Marcus, what did you do? It's a mistake, a clerical error, Marcus snapped. He grabbed his phone and dialed his private banker at Sterling Thorn, a man he played golf with. It went to voicemail. He tried the man's boss. The man's assistant, a woman who usually fawned over him, was glacial. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. Mr. Harding is in an emergency board meeting. He is unavailable. All accounts associated with Vance Innovations are frozen, pending an internal review. Frozen. The blood drained from his face. This is insane. It gets worse. David whispered, his face ashen. What? Marcus roared. Tokyo. I just got an email from Mr. Takeda's office. They're postponing the signing, indefinitely. Postponing! Marcus was shouting now, his team shrinking back. They can't postpone the deal is signed. It's just a formality. They're citing the same thing, Marcus, gross financial misrepresentation. They said they received a file detailing Project New Dawn. They're accusing you of attempting to defraud Yoshida Corp. And your own company by siphoning assets offshore. Marcus stumbled back. New Dawn. Only he and Chloe knew that name. Chloe. Did she betray him? No, it couldn't be. His phone buzzed. It was a Wall Street Journal news alert. Hayes Consolidated announces strategic partnership with Yoshida Corp. Vance Innovations merger terminated. Marcus read the words, but they didn't make sense. House Consolidated. He knew the name. Everyone did. They were a behemoth, a private monster that swallowed companies whole. But what did they have to do with... He read the article. Hayes Consolidated, the private holding company, run by elusive billionaire Arthur Hayes, announced today it had completed a strategic acquisition of... effective immediately terminating a pending merger with Vance Innovations. A spokesperson for Hayes cited a lack of confidence in Vance's leadership and disturbing internal financials. No, Marcus whispered. No. The boardroom phone rang. It was the lobby. Mr. Vance, there are men here from the bank, and a Mr. Croft. They have a court order to seize company assets. David Chen was already backing out of the room. I'm calling my lawyer, he stammered. I knew nothing about this, Marcus. I'm out. The legal team followed, scrambling for the exits. Cowards, Marcus screamed. You can't leave. The boardroom doors burst open. It wasn't bankers. It was two uniformed police officers and a man in a suit so sharp it could cut glass. Marcus Vance, the suited man said. Who the hell are you? My name is Julian Croft. I represent Miss Serafina Hayes. I'm here to serve you with a restraining order, freezing all personal and marital assets pending your divorce hearing. Marcus laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. Marital assets. There are no marital assets. The prenup is ironclad. The prenup, Julian said, placing a file on the table, is hereby voided on the grounds of fraudulent inducement and gross marital misconduct, specifically the systematic criminal transfer of assets you attempted to hide from your wife. Julian gestured to the police. Mr. Vance is also under investigation for criminal fraud, as reported to the SEC this morning by the board of Yoshida Corp. and Sterling Thorne Capital. You are to vacate these premises." "You can't," Marcus shrieked. "This is my company. It was your company," Julian said, his voice flat. "As of 9:15 a.m., when the bank called your loans, your stock became worthless. Vance Innovations is insolvent. It's over." "This is Serafina." Marcus realized, his mind spinning. "She did this. That bitch." He lunged for the phone to call Chloe. She would fix this. She was smart. Julian Croft simply held up his own phone, playing a voice message. It was Chloe's voice. "Mr. Croft, as I mentioned, I have zero loyalty to Marcus Vance, a complete psychopath. I am emailing you his private server credentials now. In exchange for full immunity and the consulting position at Hayes Consolidated, I'm happy to provide anything you need to put him away for good." Marcus stared at the phone. Betrayed. By everyone. "Hayes." He whispered the name from the Wall Street Journal article, echoing in his head. Serafina Hayes. Arthur Hayes. He looked at Julian Croft, a dawning, sickening horror filling his entire being. Her father. Julian Croft smiled a thin, cruel line. "He sends his regards. He said to tell you. He finds you. Quaint." While Marcus Vance's world imploded, Serafina sat in the sun-drenched living room of the Carlisle suite. Julian Croft had arrived as promised, flanked by a private plain-clothed security team. He had been respectful, kind, and terrifyingly efficient. "Ms. Hayes," he had said, "your father has instructed me to ensure your complete safety and comfort. A new secure phone." He handed her one. "A private obstetrician is on her way, just for a wellness check, and I am handling all legal and financial matters." What is my father doing?" she had asked, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "Mr. Hayes," Julian said, "is ensuring a just outcome." Now, hours later, Serafina watched the news on the suite's large television. The story was the lead on every financial network. A stunning collapse. Vance Innovations, once the darling of tech, declared insolvent. Marcus Vance, the charismatic CEO, is reportedly under investigation by the SEC and the Southern District of New York. Sources say the collapse was triggered by the 11th-hour cancellation of a merger with Yoshida Corp., which was simultaneously acquired by the powerhouse Hayes Consolidated. Serafina stared at the screen. Hayes Consolidated. She had always known her father was successful. The estate, the private plane, the effortless generosity. But she, like Marcus, had believed the semi-retired investor persona. She had never wanted to be a tycoon's daughter. She'd wanted a normal life. She'd wanted to be loved for herself. She had never in her entire life Googled her own father. With a trembling finger, she typed Arthur Hayes into her new phone. The results flooded the screen. Forbes, the ghost billionaire. Arthur Hayes, the 300BB man who hides in plain sight. Bloomberg. Inside Hayes, consolidated the private empire that moves the world. Vanity Fair. The Quiet King. How Arthur Hayes controls everything, from shipping to Silicon Valley. There were pictures of him, not just at his local library, but on discreet yachts in meetings in Tokyo, shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers. He wasn't just rich. He was one of the most powerful and most private men on the planet. And Marcus Vance had called him quaint. The full earth-shattering scale of Marcus's miscalculation hit her. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He hadn't just betrayed the daughter of a wealthy man. He had, with his own arrogance, picked a fight with a leviathan. He had tried to defraud a company owned by the man he was simultaneously betraying. The phone rang. It was her father. "Sarah, are you watching the news?" His voice was warm again. The kindly father was back. "Daddy, I never knew," she whispered, looking at an article about his control of global logistics. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what, my girl," he said gently, "that I had a big, boring company. It's not important. You are important. My grandchild is important. Your happiness was all that mattered. I wanted you to find someone who loved Serafina Hayes, not the Hayes consolidated heiress. It appears I failed to protect you from that." "No, Dad," she said, tears in her eyes. "You didn't fail. I chose him. I was blind." "Well," Arthur said, a hint of steel returning, "the blindness is cured. Now Julian has voided the prenup. He's also filed for an emergency seizure of 50% of all known assets, which unfortunately for Marcus, the SEC is now helping us uncover." "What about Chloe?" Serafina asked, a trace of bitterness in her voice. "Ms. Dubois," Arthur said, "was very cooperative. She provided us with the final piece of the puzzle, Marcus's hidden servers. In exchange, she was offered a consulting position, a very lucrative one." You hired her?" Serafina felt a pang of disbelief. "Oh yes," Arthur said. "Her contract starts tomorrow, and it's terminable at will. Julian is arranging for her consulting to take place at our new data entry facility in Anchorage in January." Serafina couldn't help a small, watery laugh. "Dad." "She'll quit, of course," Arthur continued breezily. "But her reputation on Wall Street after betraying her boss so thoroughly to a competitor, it's finished. No one will ever trust her again. She's radioactive. As for Marcus," his voice hardened, "his house of cards was built on my territory, Sarah. I just blew it down." The penthouse, Arthur explained, was leveraged to the hilt for the bridge loan. With the loan called, the bank was foreclosing today. The cars were leased. The art was rented. The Patek Philippe on his wrist was bought with a credit line that as of 10:00 a.m. no longer existed. "He has nothing?" Serafina asked. "He has the clothes on his back," Arthur Hayes confirmed, "and a staggering amount of personal legal debt. He will be in court for the rest of his life." A new terrible chapter was over. A new uncertain one was beginning. "Come home, Sarah," Arthur said. "Come upstate. Let me take care of you and the baby." "I'm on my way," she said, finally feeling for the first time in months completely safe. Marcus was still standing in the ruins of his boardroom when Julian Croft and the officers left. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother, Marcus. "What is happening?" "The bank just seized our house. They said you used it as collateral." He ignored it. His phone buzzed again. An email from the board of his own building. "Dear Mr. Vance, we are informed of your delinquency. Your access to the premises, including the penthouse and all building amenities, is hereby revoked. Security has been instructed to deny you entry. He was locked out." He stumbled into the hallway. His employees, the people who had worshipped him, wouldn't meet his eye. They were packing their desks, whispering. He was a ghost in his own company. He took the elevator down. When he exited into the lobby, the security guard, the one who used to run to get him cabs, held up a hand. "Sorry, Mr. Vance, I can't let you leave." "What?" "You can't hold me here." "No, sir." "But They're here for your personal effects. The guard pointed. A man in a cheap suit was standing by the door. A repo man. Marcus Vance, the man said, reading from a clipboard. I'm here for a Patek Philippe Grandmaster Chime reference, 6300G purchased via a Sterling Thorn credit line. I need you to hand it over. You're taking my watch, Marcus stammered, his voice cracking. Yes, sir, or the officers upstairs can add theft to your list. Slowly, his hands shaking, Marcus undid the clasp. The $2.5 million watch, his symbol of success, felt suddenly heavy and cold. He dropped it into the man's outstretched cloth bag. The repo man checked it off. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day. Marcus pushed through the revolving doors, shoeless, watchless, and broken. He stood on the sidewalk, the city noise deafening. He had no office, no company, no car, no home. He checked his wallet. He had $400 in cash. He began to walk. He didn't know where. He walked for miles in his $20,000 suit, his mind a howling void. He ended up in front of the penthouse, his home. He tried the service entrance. The new security guard, a man he didn't recognize, stepped in front of him. Can I help you? I'm Marcus Vance. I live here. The guard checked his list. No, sir, you don't. You need to leave, or I'm calling the police. Defeated, he slumped onto a bench in Central Park, directly across from the building. His building. He had to call her. Serafina. She was kind. She was gentle. She loved him once. She wouldn't let this happen. She wouldn't let him, the father of her child, be destitute. He pulled out his phone, which was already flashing low battery. He dialed the number he knew by heart. It rang once. A man answered. Not Serafina. Vance? The voice was cold familiar. Julian Croft. Where is she? Marcus demanded, trying to summon his old authority. Where is my wife? I need to speak to her. Ms. Hayes is unavailable, Julian said. She is currently at her father's estate under medical care, resting from the significant emotional distress you caused her. I need to talk to her. This is a misunderstanding. Her father, I didn't know. That, Julian said, is the single most obvious fact in this entire affair. You didn't know. You didn't bother to know. You married a woman and never once saw her, only her formality. You can't do this. Marcus was sobbing now, a pathetic, wrecked sound. I have nothing. You've taken everything. No, Mr. Vance. We didn't take anything. Julian corrected his voice, devoid of all emotion. We simply revealed the truth. The everything you had was a fantasy built on fraud and leverage. It was a house of cards. Mr. Hayes. He just owns the table it was built on. Please, Marcus begged. I'll do anything. I'll apologize. Please, I'm the father of her baby. You dismissed that baby as a burden, Julian said. You will have no contact with Ms. Hayes or the child ever. Your parental rights will be terminated on the grounds of endangerment and gross misconduct. If you attempt to contact her or her father again, you will be arrested. Is that clear? What am I supposed to do? Marcus whispered. I believe the modern parlance is figure it out. Goodbye, Mr. Vance. The line went dead. Marcus sat there as the sun set the lights of his penthouse turning on one by one. Someone was inside. Cleaners, probably. Liquidators. His phone died. He was alone. With 400 his ruined suit and a name that was now synonymous with failure. The reckoning was complete. 3 months passed. The winter snows fell heavily on the 10,000-acre Hayes estate upstate. It was quiet, peaceful. Serafina sat in a window seat, a thick cashmere blanket over her lap, her belly now round and full. Her due date was 2 weeks away. She was not the same woman who had been thrown out of her penthouse. The shock had given way to grief, and the grief had given way to a quiet, hard-won strength. She was in therapy. She was swimming every day in the estate's indoor pool, and she was working. Her father, seeing the sharp intelligence in her that Marcus had dismissed as dull, had given her a new project heading the philanthropic Hayes Foundation. She was restructuring their maternal and child health initiative, pouring millions into shelters for domestic abuse victims and programs for single mothers. She was using her pain to build something real. "You're glowing, Sarah," Arthur said, walking in with 2 cups of decaf tea. "I feel good, Dad," she said, and she meant it. "I feel like myself, the version of myself I was before him." "Good. That's my girl." He sat across from her, the fireplace crackling between them. What happened to him?" she asked. She didn't ask often, but today she needed to know. Arthur sipped his tea. "Marcus Vance, he's no longer a person of interest." "Dad," Arthur sighed. "He's in Ohio. After spending his last $400 on a bus ticket, he was homeless for a time. He sold his other suit for food. He eventually found work." "Work where?" "Night manager." Arthur said, "At a truck stop motel off I-70. He clears $400 a week. He lives in one of the back rooms. Most of his wages are garnished to pay the preliminary judgments against him. He'll be in debt for the rest of his life." Serafina was quiet. She felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just a vast, empty distance. He was a stranger, a ghost. "And Chloe?" "She lasted 48 hours in Anchorage," Arthur said with a small smile. "She is currently being sued by 3 different firms for breach of contract. Julian Croft also, anonymously, sent her new potential employers the recording of her betraying Marcus. As I said, radioactive." Serafina nodded, closing that chapter for good. "Good." She looked out the window. "I've decided on a name for the baby." "Oh, Theodore Arthur Hayes," she said. Arthur's eyes, the eyes of the $300 billion ghost, filled with tears. He reached across and squeezed her hand. That's a fine name." Meanwhile in Ohio, the bell on the motel lobby door jingled. Marcus looked up from the stained counter, his eyes raw with fatigue. A businessman in a crisp suit walked in. "One night," the man said, tossing a credit card. Marcus ran the card. "Declined." "Sorry, sir. It's declined." "What, run it again?" the man snapped. Marcus ran it. "Declined." "Look," the man said, "I'm on my way to a meeting. Wait. Don't I know you?" Marcus froze. The man was squinting at him. Holy hell. You're Marcus Vance. You were on the cover of Forbes." Marcus looked down, his face burning with a shame so profound it was suffocating. "No," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. "You're mistaken. I'm nobody." The businessman stared, then recognition dawned. Wow. The fall. It really was. Man. He laughed, pulling out cash. "Guess I'll pay cash then. Keep the change." Marcus took the money, his hand trembling, and handed the man a key. He didn't watch him walk away. He just stared at his own reflection in the dark check-in screen, a tired, broken man in a cheap polyester uniform. He was right. He was nobody. The birth was worlds away from the sterile, cold luxury of her former life. Serafina had chosen a private, discreet birthing center, not a high-profile hospital. The room was warm, filled with soft light, and the only person in the waiting room was her father. When the final moment came after hours of labor, she held her son for the first time. The world, which had been a chaotic, roaring storm of betrayal and legal battles, snapped into perfect, silent focus. She looked at his tiny, perfect face, his eyes squeezed shut, his small hand gripping her finger with surprising strength. All the pain, all the humiliation, all the nights spent weeping for the man she thought she loved. It all evaporated. It wasn't just gone. It was insignificant. It was ash. This tiny 7-pound life in her arms was the only thing that had ever truly mattered. This was her blood, her future. This was not a burden. He was a miracle. "He's beautiful, Sarah," Arthur Hayes said, his voice thick. He was standing in the doorway. His bespoke suit rumpled his eyes red. The $300 billion tycoon was gone, replaced by a simple grandfather, utterly undone by the sight. "What's his name, my girl?" he whispered, walking over to touch the baby's head with a trembling finger. "Theodore Arthur Hayes," Serafina said, her voice clear and strong. Arthur's composure broke. He turned away for a moment, wiping his eyes before sitting on the edge of her bed. "A fine name. A strong name." He looked at his daughter, his pride a tangible thing. "He has your strength, Serafina. Never forget that." Life moved forward, not with a crawl, but with a confident, driving purpose. The first year of Theo's life was a whirlwind, but not of nannies and social events. Serafina moved into her own home, a warm, elegant brownstone in the city close to her father's New York office. She officially took the helm of the Hayes Foundation, and she was not a figurehead. She poured her anger, her intelligence, and her newfound clarity into her work. The Serafina Hayes Initiative for Maternal and Child Safety was born. She didn't just write checks. She was in the trenches. 6 months after Theo was born, she stood before a hostile congressional subcommittee advocating for new laws to protect spouses from financial fraud in divorce. Mr. Vance's actions were an anomaly, a scandal. A smug senator from a rival's payroll interrupted. "The law doesn't need to change for one woman's bad marriage." The old Serafina would have shrunk. The new one leaned into the microphone. "Senator," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber, "my bad marriage is the reality for thousands of women who lack my resources. They don't have a Hayes Consolidated to protect them. They are left with nothing. My scandal, as you call it, is a spotlight, and I intend to aim it at every dark corner you and your colleagues would prefer to ignore. Now, if you'll let me return to the specifics of asset declaration reform." She didn't just win the argument, she dominated it. The bill passed. She was there to cut the ribbon on the first Theo's House, a state-of-the-art shelter for women and children fleeing domestic abuse. She held her son's hand as she spoke not of her own story, but of the stories of the women she was there to help. She had turned her pain into a shield for others. 2 years passed. In a sterile, glass-walled conference room in a Chicago high-rise, Chloe Dubois was on the verge of victory. It had been a brutal 2 years. The 48 hours in Anchorage had been a special kind of hell, but the hell that followed was worse. Radioactive, Arthur had called her, and he was right. No firm on Wall Street would touch her. Her name was poison. But Chloe was a survivor. She had changed her name. She'd moved to Chicago, taken a low-level job at a promising mid-level logistics firm, and clawed her way up. She was ruthless, brilliant, and had hidden her past perfectly. Today was the final interview, the big one, Senior Vice President of Midwest Operations. She had nailed it. "Your resume is spectacular, Catherine," the CEO, Mr. Harris, said, using her new name. "Your tactics are aggressive. I like that. The board agrees. There's just one final formality." Chloe smiled, smoothing her suit. "Of course." "Our firm was acquired 6 months ago," Harris said. "A massive private equity buyout. We are now part of a much larger global family. All executive hires must be personally signed off by the head of acquisitions from the parent company. He's here now." The door opened. Chloe Dubois's blood didn't just run cold. It turned to solid ice. Julian Croft walked in. He looked exactly the same. The perfect suit, the dead eyes, the air of absolute final authority. He didn't look at Chloe. He walked to the head of the table. Mr. Harris beamed. "Mr. Croft, great to see you. This is Catherine Myers, our top candidate." Julian opened a file. He looked at Chloe, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something. It was distaste, like looking at an insect. "Ms. Dubois," he said, his voice as flat and final as it had been on the phone 2 years ago. The CEO's smile vanished. "What, Mr. Croft? This is Catherine Myers. This, Julian said, is Chloe Dubois, a former executive at a tech firm that attempted to criminally defraud one of our largest partners. She actively participated in the conspiracy, then betrayed her co-conspirator to save herself. A betrayal she failed to see through." "That's a lie!" Chloe shrieked, her mask of competence shattering. I have no idea who that is. I helped you. I gave you the data." "You are a traitor, Ms. Dubois," Julian said, as if explaining a simple fact. "You betray your boss. You betray your partners. You betray your own identity. Hayes Consolidated, and by extension, this firm has a zero-tolerance policy for your specific brand of liability." You own this place," Chloe whispered, the scale of her defeat crashing down on her. "I've been working for you. You've been in our shark tank all along. You just didn't know it," Julian said, echoing his master's words. He looked at the stunned CEO. "Mr. Harris, we are not hiring this woman. Have security escort her out, and I'd recommend a full audit of her department. Traitors tend to be creatures of habit." Chloe didn't even scream this time. She was hollow. As the security guards took her arms, she saw a TV in the lobby. On the screen was Serafina Hayes, smiling, cutting a ribbon with her young son Theo. The chyron read, "Hayes Foundation, pledges, 500 to global women's initiatives." The story ended not with a bang, but with the quiet, final click of a closing door. She was finished. For good. That evening, Serafina stood on the balcony of her brownstone. The city glittered below. She heard small footsteps and then felt a tug on her pants. "Up, Mummy!" She laughed, sweeping Theo into her arms. He was 3 now, bright and loud and full of joy. "Look at the lights, Theo," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. "It's all so big, isn't it?" "Big," he echoed. She held him tight, her heart full. She thought for a fleeting second of a man in a polyester uniform at a truck stop, a man whose face she could barely remember, a man who had tried to erase her and had instead given her the world. Marcus Vance had wanted a dynasty. He had wanted power. He had wanted a legacy. Serafina looked at the son in her arms and at the city she was helping to change. "He wanted it all," she whispered to the wind. "And in the end, I'm the one who got it." She went inside to her son, her father, and her life. She was not a victim. She was not an heiress. She was a haze. And she was just getting started. Karma isn't always instant, but when it arrives, it's often total. Marcus Vance didn't just lose his money. He lost his name, his future, and his identity. He flew too close to the sun, forgetting that the woman he dismissed as a liability was the daughter of the man who owned the sky. Serafina, in contrast, turned her deepest pain into her greatest power. She rebuilt her life, not on a foundation of revenge, but of purpose, creating a true legacy for her son. This story shows that true strength isn't about how much you have, but about who you are when it's all taken away. What did you think of Marcus's downfall? Was it justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of betrayal and ultimate justice, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life drama.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel. Today we've got a touching and dramatic tale about a high-powered CEO millionaire who unexpectedly discovers he has a daughter in a luxurious restaurant. An encounter that completely changes both of their lives. The most thrilling moment at the end of this story is when the father makes a life-altering decision to open his heart and home to the young girl, casting aside the barriers of wealth and prestige to embrace true family. If you'd like to know exactly how everything turns out, how love conquers uncertainty and reshapes the future, be sure to listen to the whole story until the very last line. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support us and get updates on more great stories. Leave a comment below about your own thoughts and let us know where you're listening from. We love hearing all of your perspectives. Mason Brooks was known throughout New York's financial district as a shrewd dealmaker and CEO millionaire who had risen from poverty to unimaginable wealth. His name was synonymous with power and prestige, and he carefully cultivated an elite lifestyle that showcased his success. Everyone knew how he commanded respect in boardrooms, how an entire staff scrambled whenever he so much as raised an eyebrow. Yet for all the awe he inspired, Mason kept his personal life under tight lock and key. He lived in a sprawling luxury penthouse overlooking the city, possessed a fleet of high-end cars, and rarely allowed others to see beyond his formidable business persona. Even the few friends he had would joke that Mason lived on spreadsheets and phone calls alone. There was always a new contract to seal, another big investor to impress, and another business frontier to conquer. That was the sum of his existence, or so he believed, until one fateful evening at an upscale restaurant shattered his carefully controlled reality. It happened on a crisp autumn night when the city lights glistened like scattered diamonds along the Hudson. Mason had been ensconced at his favorite corner table in La Fontaine, an exclusive establishment frequented by celebrities, dignitaries, and fellow moguls. The restaurant's interior was all polished marble floors, subdued lighting, and delicate strains of classical music drifting through the air. Mason's routine was as meticulous as his business strategy. Order the same bottle of vintage red wine, enjoy a filet cooked medium rare, and sift through financial reports on his phone. That night, he was reviewing details of a new overseas merger, fully immersed in the excitement of an impending multi-million-dollar deal. Nothing suggested that his life would change in mere seconds. Just as he speared a piece of steak, Mason felt a presence at the edge of his vision. Initially, he assumed it was a server coming to refill his glass, but when he glanced up, he saw a small girl no older than 8. She had chestnut hair tied with a pale violet ribbon, her bright hazel eyes fixed on his face with unsettling focus. The quiet confidence in her gaze was so striking that he momentarily forgot to breathe. This child did not appear lost or scared. Instead, she stood as though she had been looking for him her entire life. Before he could utter a single word, she spoke in a steady, almost practiced tone. "You're my dad." 4 words, and in that instant, the chatter of the restaurant faded into a murmur, as if the entire world had been muted. Mason Brooks was never one to show surprise, but he felt the color drain from his face. All sense of composure slipped through his fingers. He remembered every fling he had ever had, every fleeting relationship, and the conscious effort he'd made to remain unattached. He had always insisted he wasn't the paternal type, convinced a child would only complicate his relentless march toward success. The notion that he might have fathered a daughter at some point had never even crossed his mind. Time seemed to slow. The background music and the clink of silverware against expensive plates became a distant echo. In that frozen moment, Mason's mind raced with skepticism. Was this a scam, a bizarre prank, or a misunderstanding? Yet nothing in the child's solemn eyes suggested deception. Her name, he soon learned, was Lily. In a voice just above a whisper, she told him that her mother, Teresa, had recently passed away, leaving behind a single folded piece of paper that named Mason Brooks as Lily's biological father. Lily's face betrayed neither anger nor desperation. She had simply come to the only person left in her world. Mason's stomach lurched as he stared at the official-looking document she placed on the table. His signature and personal data were scrawled across a paternity record he had no memory of ever signing. Could it be forged? Could it be real? A wave of conflicting emotions coursed through him. Shock, confusion, curiosity, and beneath it all, a pang of guilt he could scarcely understand. La Fontaine's refined atmosphere felt stifling after Lily's shocking revelation. The gentle tinkling of a piano solo continued somewhere in the background. Yet to Mason, the music now sounded hollow. It seemed absurd that, for everyone else in the restaurant, life was going on as usual. Couples whispering sweet nothings over dessert, business associates toasting triumphs with champagne. Meanwhile, Mason's entire world was fracturing in front of him, courtesy of a wide-eyed 8-year-old who had just called him Dad. He searched Lily's face for further clues about her intentions. Was she here because she needed financial support? Some sort of legal settlement? Or was there something deeper, a longing for a parent she had never known? He pushed his untouched plate aside and leaned in. "Who brought you here, Lily?" His voice sounded oddly mechanical to his own ears, as if he were delivering lines from a script he'd never rehearsed. Lily gazed up at him, unwavering. "I came by myself," she stated simply, clutching her small purse. "Mom left me with the neighbors when she got too sick. After she died, I found the papers with your name." Mason swallowed. Teresa, he thought. That name conjured fleeting memories from nearly a decade ago. Weeks of passion during a trip to the Midwest. An intriguing woman with warm laughter who had captivated him momentarily before he returned to New York. He remembered having parted ways amicably with no expectation of seeing her again. Apparently, Teresa had carried a secret with her for 8 long years. A swirl of emotions churned in Mason's chest. He had built his empire on unwavering logic and discipline. Now those pillars felt dangerously unsteady. He searched for a rational explanation. Perhaps the documents were forged, or Teresa had made an error. Yet Lily's earnest demeanor implied otherwise. There was also something undeniably familiar in her features, a subtle resemblance that belied any doubt he tried to cling to. I don't understand," he finally admitted, slumping back in his seat. Lily did not respond. She stood quietly, her little face set in that same determined expression, as if bracing herself for his rejection. The idea that an 8-year-old child had come all this way to an upscale restaurant, the sort that catered only to the city's wealthiest, gnawed at him. How must it have felt to approach a stranger, believing him to be her father? Embarrassment and responsibility warred inside him, tangling with an unspoken protectiveness he never knew himself capable of. Mason felt a tightness in his throat as he began to realize that Lily had no one else in her life. Without making a grand show of it, she was essentially asking him if he would step up. A waiter hovered nearby, uncertain whether to refill water glasses or politely retreat. Mason waved him off without a glance, his attention fixed squarely on Lily. "You're coming with me," he heard himself say, in a tone that brooked no argument. The paternal insistence in his voice startled him as much as it seemed to reassure her. Lily gave a small nod, relief flickering across her delicate features. She told him she had nowhere else to go, and Mason felt that statement like a punch to the gut. The realization sank in that this was not a momentary dilemma he could solve with a signed check. This was a life-changing moment, a revelation that demanded something far more profound than financial generosity. Staring into Lily's eyes, Mason experienced a surreal sense of time speeding up and slowing down all at once. Questions threatened to overwhelm him. Where would she sleep tonight? How would he handle guardianship? What would the press say if they discovered the city's famously single CEO millionaire had a long-lost daughter? Yet overshadowing every doubt was a paternal instinct ignited in his core, a protective urge that told him he could not abandon her. Taking a deep breath, he stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come on," he murmured, trying to sound gentler than before. "We'll figure this out." Outside, the city was a blaze of neon signs and traffic lights, taxis weaving in and out of lanes with typical New York impatience. Mason led Lily to the private valet area, where his sleek black town car awaited. He hesitated momentarily, wondering if he was making a rash decision by taking her under his roof so quickly. But what alternative did he have? She was his daughter if the paperwork was real, and even if it weren't, she was a child with nowhere else to go. The doorman recognized Mason instantly, tipping his hat as he opened the passenger door. Lily climbed into the leather seat, glancing around with an expression of subdued curiosity. The hush of the restaurant gave way to the low hum of the city. As he maneuvered through traffic, Mason realized his mind was crowding with questions he had no immediate answers to. He glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. She was studying the passing skyscrapers as though each one held a secret. Exhaustion tugged at her eyelids, but she stayed upright, too tense to relax completely. Mason felt a wave of anxiety. He had never cared for a child, never even babysat a cousin or a friend's kid. His life revolved around negotiations, not nurturing, and yet a strange determination crept over him. He told himself he could handle this. He had achieved the impossible in the business world. Surely learning how to care for a child couldn't be more daunting than finalizing a complex merger. Could it? They arrived at the luxury penthouse he called home. Mason rarely brought visitors there. It was his sanctuary, a place he could isolate from the demands of the world. As they stepped onto the private elevator, Lily stared at the mirrored walls reflecting their images back. Mason, tall and sharply dressed in a navy suit, looked the part of a self-made mogul. Lily, in her simple dress and worn shoes, seemed out of place in this environment of glitz and polish. "I know it's late," he murmured, breaking the silence that had thickened between them. "But we'll sort out the details in the morning." His words were abrupt, revealing that he was as overwhelmed as she must have been. The elevator doors slid open directly into the penthouse's expansive living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan's skyline, shimmering against the night sky. Modern art pieces hung strategically on pristine walls, and the furniture, all custom-made, was arranged with meticulous precision. Lily stood still, taking in the opulence. Though she did not say it aloud, Mason could sense her awe. He flicked on a light, bathing the space in a warm glow, and tried to view his home through Lily's eyes. His penthouse was quiet, immaculate, almost sterile. No personal photographs, no whimsical decor. He had never needed such things before. "Guest room is down the hall," Mason said, feeling uncharacteristically uncertain. "There's a bathroom connected, and we'll find you some clothes." Lily nodded silently and followed him. He pushed open a door, revealing a neatly furnished suite with a queen-size bed, tasteful art on the walls, and plush carpeting that felt like walking on clouds. The decor was neutral grays and whites, accentuated by a large window that looked out at the city lights. Standing at the threshold, Lily clutched her small purse and stared as though she had entered a display on the pages of a magazine. Mason realized he had no idea what a little girl might need. Did she want to talk about her mother's passing? Did she need comfort in the form of a bedtime story? Or did she prefer independence? Uncertain, he tried to sound practical. If you need anything, I'm in the master bedroom just around the corner. Lily set her purse on the bed, an oddly delicate motion, as though she were afraid of disturbing the pristine environment. Then turning to Mason, she offered a small smile. "Thank you," she whispered. It was a simple phrase, but coming from her, it resonated deeply. He nodded, swallowing a sudden lump in his throat, and left her to settle in. Mason barely slept that night. Memories he had long since buried clamored for attention. Images of Teresa with her bright smile and quick wit. Fleeting moments in Chicago when Mason had felt an uncharacteristic sense of closeness to another person. He could not recall Teresa ever mentioning pregnancy or children, and in his single-minded pursuit of success, he had never checked back in after their brief relationship ended. Now he felt haunted by that omission, realizing there was so much about Teresa he hadn't known, especially the fact that she had been raising a child who might be his. Guilt gnawed at him, mingling with an urgent desire to figure out how to care for Lily. By the time dawn broke, he gave up on trying to rest. He rose, showered, and donned one of his signature tailored suits. Lily was still asleep, so he tiptoed past her guest room and headed into his study. With the blinds open, early sunlight illuminated the glass desk, where he normally devised high-stakes business strategies. Today, he stared at financial forecasts and market trends, but none of it sank in. Every thought circled back to Lily. The responsibility of parenthood dwarfed even the biggest deal he had ever negotiated. He was supposed to be a man of unwavering confidence, yet he felt no confidence at all in this realm. Eventually, the faint sound of footsteps broke his reverie. He turned to find Lily standing at the threshold, her chestnut hair slightly tousled from sleep. She wore the same dress from the night before, looking small and uncertain against the backdrop of polished floors and modern art. "Morning," Mason ventured, forcing a smile. Lily nodded, tugging absently at the hem of her dress. "I couldn't sleep much," she admitted. "It's weird being here." He detected neither accusation nor anger in her voice, just a sort of resigned acceptance that her life had changed forever. A pang of regret shot through him. How different would her childhood have been if he had known about her from the start? "Are you hungry?" he asked, standing up. Lily hesitated as though she wasn't sure if she was allowed to say yes. "A bit," she replied quietly. Mason led her to the spacious kitchen, all stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. He rarely used the stove. It was mostly for show. Typically, a private chef delivered his meals, or he dined out at lavish restaurants. But he had no idea if Lily would prefer scrambled eggs, pancakes, or something else entirely. "I'll make some egg," he decided, rummaging for a pan. Lily perched on a bar stool, eyeing the big windows that revealed the city skyline. She looked like she wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but she remained silent. Mason cracked a few eggs, methodically whisking them. "How long were you with the neighbor?" he asked, carefully choosing his words. Lily shrugged. "A couple of weeks. When Mom got sick, I stayed there because she couldn't take care of me anymore." The calmness with which she said it unnerved him. He caught himself tightening his grip on the spatula, anger flaring at the unfairness of it all. This child had lost her mother and had been left to fend for herself. He wondered if Teresa had planned to tell him before she died, or if Lily's discovery of those papers had been an act of fate. Scraping the eggs onto a plate, Mason slid the dish toward Lily. He realized he was staring, cataloging each expression and gesture, as though trying to confirm that she was indeed his. Lily wrinkled her nose at the slightly overcooked edges, but dug in gratefully. "I can cook better than this," she murmured, attempting a playful jibe. Mason smirked. "I'd like to see you try. My stove's probably older than you are." That made her giggle, and the soft, warm sound of her laughter eased some of the tension in the room. After breakfast, Mason faced another conundrum. What would Lily do while he was at the office? Ordinarily, he would have spent the entire day locked in high-stakes meetings. He had never had to consider childcare. In a moment of impulsive resolve, he phoned his personal assistant, Jordan, instructing her to come to the penthouse. Jordan was the ultimate professional, sharp-witted, impeccably organized, and fiercely loyal. She was used to Mason's abrupt changes of plan, but showing up to watch a child certainly wasn't in her usual job description. Shortly after, Jordan arrived in a crisp black suit, tablet in hand, her high heels clicking across the polished floors. She threw a polite smile in Lily's direction, though curiosity flickered in her eyes. "I've cleared your schedule until noon, Mr. Brooks," Jordan informed him. "Shall I rebook your strategy calls for tomorrow?" Mason considered her question, internally wrestling with the realization that Lily's welfare now overshadowed every boardroom concern. Yet old habits die hard, and he still felt compelled to maintain some semblance of his work routine. "Yes, push the main meeting to tomorrow," he instructed, "but I do need to finalize those import deals by this evening." Jordan nodded, but her gaze flicked to Lily. "I'll stay here for a few hours," she offered smoothly, "if that's what you require." Mason pressed his lips together. "Thank you. Keep an eye on her. Take her shopping for some clothes, maybe. Make sure she's not bored. I'll try to come back as soon as I can." Lily, who had been quietly drawing in a notebook, looked up at him. There was a spark of uncertainty in her eyes, as though she feared he might vanish and never return. Mason leaned down, meeting her gaze. "I'll be back," he promised softly. "We'll talk more then." Despite that reassurance, Mason felt a twinge of guilt as he left the penthouse. It was foreign to him, the notion of worrying about someone else's emotional state. He had spent his life focusing on profit margins and brand expansions, but Lily's future was a completely different kind of priority. On the elevator ride to the parking garage, his thoughts drifted to the possibility that perhaps Teresa had never intended for him to be in Lily's life. Why else would she have kept their daughter a secret for so many years? The question nagged at him, threatening to derail his focus as he drove to his corporate headquarters. At the office, chaos awaited. Proposals to review, negotiations to finalize. Multiple top-tier clients demanding attention. Normally, Mason thrived in this environment. He was known for his unwavering cool under pressure. Yet on this day, he found himself checking the time incessantly, counting the minutes until he could return home. During a brief moment between meetings, he called Jordan for an update. "She's fine," Jordan reported. "We went to a boutique, got her a few outfits. She's polite but shy. Not sure what to make of all this, I think." Mason's shoulders relaxed fractionally. "I'm leaving here soon. Thanks for doing that." Before he could end the call, Jordan added, "And sir, I'm assuming there's a big story here. Let me know if you want me to handle any media inquiries or, confidentiality measures." Mason closed his eyes, recognizing the storm that could erupt if tabloids discovered that the famously single CEO millionaire was harboring a long-lost daughter. "I trust your discretion," he said tersely, "but keep it quiet for now. She's just a child." After hanging up, he couldn't concentrate on anything else. The spreadsheets and strategy documents blurred in front of him, overshadowed by thoughts of Lily. When Mason finally returned to the penthouse in the late afternoon, he found Lily seated at the kitchen island, flipping through a children's book. She was dressed in new jeans and a lavender sweater, her hair combed neatly. Jordan was nearby, organizing files on her tablet. The tension in Mason's chest eased slightly at the domestic scene. It felt oddly comforting to see Lily engage in something so normal. Reading, a simple pleasure he himself had rarely indulged in since launching his career. Lily looked up when he entered, her eyes brightening. She closed the book and hopped off the stool. Jordan greeted him with a curt nod. "All good, Mr. Brooks. We have a minor crisis in the Manila merger, but nothing you can't handle tomorrow. I can stay if you need help this evening." Mason shook his head. "Thank you, Jordan, but we'll be fine." Jordan gave him an inscrutable look before gathering her things and leaving. Once the door clicked shut, the silence in the penthouse felt more intimate. Lily stood there, her small hands folded. For a moment, neither of them knew what to say. It was as though they were both navigating uncharted waters, unsure how to proceed. Mason decided to break the ice by preparing dinner together. He knew next to nothing about cooking, but the private chef was off duty, and he wanted to do something that might bridge the gap between them. Scouring the fridge, he found chicken, a few vegetables, and some rice. "Do you want to help?" he asked Lily. She nodded, stepping forward with a guarded eagerness that suggested she wasn't used to adults asking for her input. As they worked side by side, Mason chopping vegetables, Lily measuring rice, he couldn't shake a sense of déjà vu. It reminded him of how Teresa had once teased him for not even knowing how to boil water properly. While the chicken simmered, Lily glanced at him. "How did you meet my mom?" The question was inevitable, yet it still jarred Mason to his core. He set down the wooden spoon, choosing his words carefully. "I was traveling in Chicago on business," he began. "I met Teresa at a small coffee shop. She was full of energy, smart, witty, had a really contagious laugh. We spent some time together, but my work kept me traveling a lot." Lily nodded, absorbing each word. "She never talked about you," she confessed quietly. "I only found your name on those papers. I guess I never even thought I had a dad." The weight of that statement pressed on Mason's heart. He felt a pang of remorse he could not ignore. "I didn't know about you," he reiterated. "If I had—" He stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence truthfully. Would he have done things differently? Part of him wanted to insist he would have been there for Lily from the start. But another part admitted he might have run from that responsibility, caught up as he was in his never-ending pursuit of success. Lily sensed his hesitation. "Well, you know about me now," she said simply, returning her attention to rinsing vegetables. They ate at the elegant dining table, the one usually reserved for Mason's high-profile dinner parties. Over the meal, they spoke about little things. What Lily's favorite color was, yellow, how her mother had been an amateur painter, and the reason Lily preferred reading mysteries over fairy tales. Every tidbit of her life felt like a revelation to Mason, who realized just how much he had missed. At the same time, he noted Lily's caution, how she seemed to measure her words, likely wondering if she could truly trust him. By the end of dinner, Mason found himself wishing the conversation would continue, amazed at how intriguing he found this young person, who had so abruptly entered his life. In the days that followed, Mason gradually shifted his schedule, carving out early mornings and late afternoon to spend time with Lily. His staff at Brooks Industries noticed the change immediately. Where once he was the first to arrive and the last to leave, Mason now delegated more responsibilities and ensured he was home by dinner time. At first, employees chalked it up to some discreet romantic interest, but hush-hush rumors began swirling that their driven CEO had other priorities. Mason didn't bother to correct them. He knew that once word got out about Lily, the press would have a field day. For now, he wanted to protect her from the onslaught of public interest that would inevitably follow. Over homemade dinners, often half-burned, half-decent attempts at cooking, Mason and Lily formed a slow but steady bond. There were awkward moments, like when Lily asked about bedtime routines or mentioned how she once tried to babysit herself while her mom worked a late shift, and Mason had no clue how to respond without feeling ashamed. Yet there were also surprising moments of warmth. One evening, Lily showed him a sketch of the skyline she had drawn. It was remarkably detailed for a child her age, capturing the essence of towering buildings as the sunset turned them gold. Mason praised her talent, and she beamed, confessing that Teresa had taught her basic drawing techniques. The revelation was bittersweet, as it underscored all the interest Mason had never known about his daughter. 2 weeks into Lily's stay, Mason came home to discover she had rearranged some of the framed artwork on the living room walls. Instead of the impersonal modern paintings, Lily had placed her own sketches in the frames. She had done so neatly without damaging anything, but it was a bold choice that startled him. At first, he nearly scolded her. His penthouse had always been curated to reflect a certain image of austere luxury, clean lines, contemporary pieces, and virtually no personal touches. It was his fortress of solitude, free from the messy unpredictability of real life. But as Lily stood there, waiting for his reaction, he realized how proud she felt. She had tried to make the space more like a home instead of a showplace. Mason paused, inhaled, and then nodded. "They're beautiful," he finally said, letting his words convey genuine admiration. Lily's eyes sparkled, and she thanked him quietly. For the first time, the walls of his penthouse offered a glimpse of emotional family drama rather than professional detachment. The frames now housed drawings of cityscapes, flowers, and even a small picture of two figures, clearly Lily's interpretation of herself and Mason, side by side. It was a moment that crystallized how much had shifted in Mason's life. He was no longer alone in his fortress. This was becoming Lily's space too, whether he had planned for it or not. During this period, Mason sought out more information about Teresa's final months. He discreetly contacted a mutual acquaintance in Chicago to learn about her passing. It turned out she had succumbed to an aggressive illness, one that took hold rapidly and left her with little time to arrange for Lily's future. Mason felt both guilty and relieved. Guilty that he had not been there, relieved that Lily had not been entirely abandoned, but had at least found her way to him through sheer determination. This knowledge further solidified his resolve to care for Lily, though he grappled daily with how to be a proper father. Sometimes he would sit in his study at midnight, combing through parenting articles online, reading about emotional support, routine, discipline, and everything in between. Each day brought new questions, new uncertainties, but also new pockets of warmth he had never imagined could exist in his life. Eventually, Mason realized it was time to consult a professional about legal guardianship. Lily's presence in his penthouse was more than a temporary arrangement. It was shaping up to be a permanent shift. The complexities of discovering family secrets in the public eye were immense, and Mason wanted to protect her from any public scrutiny as best he could. So he scheduled a private meeting with his lawyer, Margaret Sinclair, a seasoned professional known for her discretion. One crisp morning, Margaret arrived, stepping into Mason's spacious living room with a leather briefcase in tow. Lily stayed in her room, sketching, while Mason explained the situation in hushed tones. Margaret listened attentively, jotting down notes. "You'll need to file the necessary paperwork for formal custody," she advised. "Given the paternity record, it should be straightforward. But be prepared for potential legal formalities, especially if any extended family members on Teresa's side contest it." Mason nodded. The notion that anyone might try to take Lily away from him now stirred a protective instinct he was still getting used to, a fierce determination to keep her safe. Once the official process was underway, Margaret politely departed, leaving Mason alone with a stack of documents to review. He sighed, glancing down the hallway to where Lily was humming softly. The thought of losing her, after all they had been through, made his chest tighten with an emotion he could only describe as fear. It was a remarkable transformation for a man who once prided himself on never letting personal attachments interfere with his ambitions. Yet here he was, weighed down by the possibility that Lily's future might not be entirely within his control if legal complications arose. That evening, he brought it up with Lily, gently explaining that they were taking steps so she could officially stay with him. Lily listened carefully, a mix of relief and anxiety flashing across her face. "Am I going to have to go to court?" she asked, her voice quavering slightly. Mason crouched down to her eye level, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Probably not. Margaret says I can represent us on the legal side. But whatever happens, I'm not letting you go. You understand?" Lily took a deep breath, then nodded. In that fleeting moment, Mason saw a child who had learned to be too brave, too self-sufficient for her age. He vowed to show her that she was no longer alone. As the days went on, father and daughter grew closer through small, everyday routines. Mason discovered Lily's love for detective stories and took her to a quaint little bookstore downtown, letting her pick out anything that struck her fancy. She, in turn, learned that Mason could be impatient, especially when he was reading through complex business proposals and staff reports. Yet she also glimpsed his surprising tenderness whenever she fell asleep on the couch and he carefully tucked a blanket around her shoulders. It was an unspoken dance of adaptation, each learning to accommodate the other's quirks. In many ways, Mason's life had never felt richer. To foster their growing bond, he started taking Lily to the park on weekends. They fed ducks at the pond, strolled under tree-lined paths, and sometimes just sat, enjoying the fresh air. Mason found it strangely liberating not to be chained to a phone or a laptop. Lily's curiosity and excitement over the simplest things, like a fluffy dog passing by or a vibrant flower bed, reminded Mason of a childhood innocence he'd left behind long ago. It dawned on him that being a father was not just about providing a penthouse and fancy clothes. It was about showing up, staying present, and letting someone else's happiness matter more than his own. As weeks turned into a month, Lily began to settle into Mason's penthouse as though it were truly her home. She had a routine now, from breakfast in the marble-clad kitchen to reading or drawing in the living room after her lessons were done. Mason had hired a private tutor for the interim, ensuring Lily didn't fall behind academically. Every so often, he'd pop in during a break from his work to see how she was doing, feeling a fatherly pride that still astonished him with its intensity. The once silent penthouse now resonated with the sound of Lily's footsteps, her laughter, and the hum of everyday conversation. It was as though the walls had finally come alive. One evening, they decided to watch an old family movie that Lily found among Teresa's belongings. In it, Teresa was smiling, healthy, holding a baby Lily in her arms. Mason watched with a lump in his throat. Teresa seemed radiant, singing lullabies to her infant daughter. Lily's eyes were fixed on the screen, and Mason put a comforting arm around her shoulders. When the video ended, Lily sighed, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I wish she had told you," she whispered. "Maybe things would have been easier." Mason had no immediate answer, only a deep remorse that he could not alter the past. "I'm sorry," he managed to say, cradling her head gently. "I would give anything to have known." As they sat in the dim light, a quiet understanding passed between them. Lily had lost a mother, and Mason was the only parental figure she had left. He silently vowed to be worthy of that trust. By the time Lily went to bed, wiping her tears, Mason felt a surge of protectiveness and love that he realized was far more fulfilling than any business conquest. In the solitude of his study, he reflected on the four crucial strengths that had emerged in his life since Lily's arrival. First, the power of vulnerability. By allowing himself to feel deeply and show Lily his uncertainties, he had forged a genuine bond. Second, the warmth of paternal love, an energy that transcended any material success. Third, the transformation from a solitary existence to a shared life. He saw now that genuine connection mattered more than personal achievements. And fourth, the unstoppable courage of a child. Lily had trekked alone to find him, trusting in the possibility of love when he himself might have doubted it. Soon, the formalities of Lily's custody were resolved with surprisingly little resistance. Teresa had no living relatives who wished to claim guardianship, which meant Lily's path to staying with Mason was clear. It was a day of quiet triumph when Margaret delivered the news that the paperwork was finalized. Mason felt simultaneously relieved and overwhelmed, aware that this was only the beginning of his journey as a parent. In a gesture of celebration, he took Lily to a neighborhood cafe that Teresa had once loved, according to some notes she left behind. Together, they sampled pastries and sipped hot cocoa. Lily beamed when Mason told her about plans to set up an art studio in one of the unused rooms of the penthouse, where she could paint and display her drawings freely. "Really?" she asked, eyes shining with hope. "Really," Mason assured her, smiling with a warmth that radiated from a wellspring deep within him. By the end of that afternoon, as they strolled back to the car, Mason Brooks felt something he had never experienced in his entire career: profound contentment. He realized that in stepping out of his comfort zone and embracing the role of a father, he had gained a sense of completeness that overshadowed every business victory. No longer a lone figure perched atop a skyscraper of ambition, he was part of a family, albeit a small one, and his life had a richness that no financial statement could quantify. In the months and years ahead, Mason would continue to face the usual ups and downs of parenthood: school admissions, teenage moods, possibly even heartbreaks. Yet he walked forward with newfound confidence, bolstered by the knowledge that family was, in the end, the greatest legacy a person could have. Lily had given him the chance to discover that his capacity for love and responsibility was far greater than any monetary empire he had built. And so, on that crisp evening, when they drove away from the cafe, Mason glanced at Lily, his long-lost daughter found in an upscale restaurant, and felt a wave of gratitude. This was the real heartwarming reunion, an emotional connection that would guide them both. Their future stood open and bright, a testament to unexpected parenthood and the immeasurable bonds forged not by wealth, but by trust, love, and simple, unwavering presence. In the aftermath of that emotional reveal, new challenges emerged for our father-daughter duo. The CEO, once focused solely on stock prices and corporate takeovers, grapples with balancing boardroom negotiations and bedtime stories. Meanwhile, his daughter slowly adjusts to life in a stunning high-rise, learning that genuine love sometimes requires letting down the walls you've built to protect yourself. As their bond grows stronger day by day, they encounter a series of unexpected twists. Past relationships surface, secrets from the mother's history unravel, and the CEO learns that protecting his newfound family means rethinking everything he once believed. Yet even with hurdles ahead, the power of a heartfelt promise can overcome all obstacles. If you want to discover how father and daughter navigate these trials, stay tuned and share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the final resolution.